Okay, so I want to start by sharing just an experience that we had yesterday. We were doing our group, and one of the things that we've been going through recently is reading one of our books here. And prior to actually even doing that, we were doing an intercession set. And we were getting words, and as you guys know, the way we do intercession is really unique. So rather than just praying prayers and telling God what we think he should do in a given situation, we'll actually assign a number to a certain subject, won't tell everybody what the subject is, and ask everybody to sit quiet and get some words. And then we put all the words together, and it's like prophetic intercession, and then we write a summary together. So we were doing this with the different intercession sets that we were doing, and I had noticed that spirit we've been talking a lot about, this deaf and dumbness, and even a spirit of slumber, was having a huge effect in how people were responding. We were getting words, and there was a lot of hesitation. There wasn't like a sense of clarity in the room, and I could just see how it was having an effect on people's attitudes about things. And we just stopped for a second. And I have this feeling, and this has been growing inside of me stronger and stronger, and I think what we talk about tonight will help just awaken a fire or determination to just keep fighting to push through. But I had this moment where I was just saying some of the fogginess spiritually, and it was, you know what, enough. I'm done with this. I'm so sick and tired of there being a numbness or just a sense of fogginess. You know, the Bible is really, really clear that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but he gave us a sound mind. So when we're having a rich connection with Jesus, we should have a sharpness in our mind, like a sense of clarity. You know, a moment where you're quiet, but it's not the kind of quietness that makes you want to pass out and fall asleep, but a kind of quietness where you just want to stare at God. You just want to gaze upon him, or even enter into that place of what we called from the levels of prayer with St. Teresa, that infused contemplation. You know, where you're so quiet, you're so still, and you're so in touch with God, it's like you're thinking with him. You know, that ever happened to you? I know you guys have all had those moments before where you're sitting there and you're quiet, but it's like you're thinking with God. It's as if your mind and his mind just meld together, and you have this moment where you just have a clarity of vision. And I know when we get there in intercession sets, we get these words, and sometimes we'll read through the words and just look at each other, and it's we don't even have to discuss it, because we all know what the summary is already. We all know, because the words all hang together. There's a sense of clarity and just there's just a soundness of mind, right? You've experienced that. You've been at different events where there's this clarity, you know, where your mind just becomes one with Jesus's mind, and you push through. And we just settle sometimes of not making that normal, but Scripture is really clear. We should have this sound, clear mind. And it was just over everything. And I noticed like people were having a hard time getting words. The words that we did get, it was like hard to come to conclusions with and come to a summary with. And I just stopped for a second and just said, you know what, guys, can like this just be enough? Like, can everybody just take a moment and can we just focus? Like, can we just focus for a second and not allow that spirit to be a part of what we're doing right now? And like 2 minutes later, a really, really nice, harmonious spirit dropped in. We were starting to get some really clear words about things. We got a concise summary that I think just fit really, really well. And we were able to push through. And it was like 20 minutes. Like, that's it. Like, can we just for 20 minutes, like, focus and have that clarity? And the thing that, like, really bothers me about moments like that is how quickly they happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, if there's a bad spirit in the air, and we can in like 2 minutes break through and connect in a super harmonious way where we're getting to this like infused contemplative place with Jesus. Like, shouldn't that like bother us a little bit that it was that easy? Bother us in the sense like, shouldn't I be contending for this a little bit more often? Like, why do I need somebody to give a speech before I get there? I mean, that should be like a question in our minds. Or like even think about Thursday. You know, like we got to that place where we were like actively praying, actively walking around, and did we do that as much today? Did we push it? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. That's going to be on each person, you know, to decide like what you settled with. And there's this quote that I want to read. And it says, "It is no use saying we are doing our best. You have got to succeed in doing what is necessary." It's not a verse. This is a quote from Winston Churchill. "It is no use saying we are doing our best. You've got to succeed in doing what is necessary." You see the difference? Yes. Because like all of our lives, you go to an athletic event or you go to some sort of performance-oriented event, and it's like, well, do your best. But there's this feeling a little bit of do your best, and if you don't succeed, you tried. It's like that's the hidden, like between the lines saying, isn't it? Just do your best, and if you don't succeed, well, you tried. But we're not really in this like win or lose kind of scenario, I don't think. I think we're more in it's not so much about me doing my best as much as it is, am I doing what's necessary? Am I going to do what is necessary so I can have a sound mind? And sometimes that's us coming together and doing an intercession set, and God is so present and He's so powerful in that moment that there's that supernatural, like infused contemplation where the words are just coming and the revelation's coming, and we're just connected. We're one with each other. We're really breaking through. And what's necessary might be just, well, keep doing what you're doing. That's working. But sometimes what's necessary is to say, you know what? I'm having a hard time thinking right now. I might need to stand up, or I'm going to fall asleep. Or I might need to go expose, like, hey, I'm really dealing with the Spirit right now, and I don't want it to be there. There's a different attitude when you have I'm going to do what's necessary. Sometimes I think, well, I'm going to do my best, but it's like do my best with failure being an option. But for us, God has given us a new spirit. So failure really isn't an option. It's just something we have to decide if we want to like grab a hold of or not. Jesus already did the work. He already won. You guys see an attitude different? Like when you come and you go to a service or you're doing your prayer time, like think about what is the attitude that you have. Are you just looking at it in terms of, well, I'm going to do my best. If I don't break through, well, I guess I did my best. Or are you looking at it in terms of like, you know what? Enough is enough. Like Jesus already poured out his Spirit. He's already given me the authority and power that I need to be able to break through. So it really just comes down to like, will I do what is necessary? And there's this other quote that is in the Winston Churchill theme here. And I'm no history person, but I'll give you guys a little bit of background. And it takes place in World War II, where the Nazis were just taking over everything. And Britain was in a place where it just looked totally hopeless. There's a movie that talks about it. I'd encourage you guys to see it if you haven't seen it. It's called The Darkest Hour.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
I just saw it just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it shows this conflict where you see Nazi Germany is just, they've taken over Europe, they're taking over France, and they're in that place where this little island, like, are we really going to stop this like massive evil that's sweeping through the land? And they're having this meeting discussing like what course of action are we going to take. And a lot of them want to find a way to like make peace with Hitler. And as they're having this meeting, which for us, like we look at it and it's like, well, thank God they took some of the measures that they did to resist it. But in their minds, the odds were so far against them that it was either be a slave of Nazi Germany or be killed by Nazi Germany. Like that was it. Like that was their only options. Like there just really wasn't like a whole lot of hope for success here. And at this meeting, this is what Churchill said. He said, even if we're beaten, we should be no worse off than we should be if we are now to abandon the struggle. The approach was not only futile, but involved us in a deadly danger, meaning if we make peace, that's the approach he's talking about. If the worst came to worst, it would not be a bad thing for this country to go down fighting for other countries which had been overcome by Nazi tyranny. So what he's saying is, I would rather us like perish as a country knowing that we perished under higher ideals, than to compromise ourselves and be a slave to the evil that's overcoming us. That's pretty profound, isn't it? See, and that quote really applies. I don't think they went into a war situation like that thinking in terms of, well, guys, let's go in there and let's do our best. It wasn't about doing your best. It was about doing what was necessary. Because right in front of their face was an evil that they saw in their own mind as such a threat that they would rather lose their lives before they would give themselves over to that threat. See the attitude difference there? Wasn't just to try your best. And I think it would really serve us to have that attitude a little bit when it comes to this spiritual war, because it's the same thing. If we look at it and say, well, what's the alternative of me not fighting the fight? What happens when I don't do what is necessary? See, as a country, they had to make a decision that the results, like the conclusion of not doing what was necessary, was not acceptable. It wasn't an acceptable future for them. We're not going to allow this evil that's spreading through the land to cause us to, we're not going to submit to it. We're not going to give ourselves over to it. We're not going to come to some sort of treaty with it. At a certain point in time, we just have to put our foot down and say, I'm going to do what is necessary. And at some times, some moments, what is necessary is harder than other moments. And we have to gauge it on, well, what is the climate like? If you don't have that clear, sharp mind where you're thinking with Jesus, then we have to think about what is necessary for you to break through. And then make an adjustment. Where we've talked in the past where if you're driving in the snow, you have to make adjustments to what is necessary given your conditions to drive a little different. What happens to the person who drives on the icy streets with 6 inches of snow if they drive the same way as a person who's driving in the summer? They're going to find themselves in a ditch. They just don't make the necessary adjustments. It's not so much like I'm driving my car and I'm going to do my best driving. Are you doing what is necessary to be safe? And we get that. Any even like mildly good driver gets that. We've been driving on snowy, icy roads for a very long time. Every year. It happens. So you start to think, you know what? The streets are icy. Is it even worth me going out? Maybe not. If it is worth you going out, maybe you say, I need to give some extra space to the person in front of me to be cautious. You need to adjust how fast you're driving. And the person who doesn't do what is necessary finds themselves in a ditch. It's just what happens. We do that a lot in different life circumstances. There was someone here I was like really, really proud of because they called me and said, I'm heading into a situation where I know I tend to have boundary problems. And I just wanted to call you ahead of time to just pray. You know what's so amazing about that? Is they went into a situation and said, I know myself. I know how I struggle and the kinds of things that I deal with and the situations that are harder for me and the situations that are easier for me. You know that, don't you? You know exactly when you're headed into a situation where you're liable to stumble compared to when you tend to be a little stronger. And I knew that this person was going to do well in calling because they were going into it like somebody who knows how to drive in the snow. So we're not perfect. We haven't mastered all of these things in our own process. We still have soft spots and we still have weak areas and things that we tend to just stumble in pretty often. But what if you do what is necessary when those things come? See, for this person, what was necessary for them was to make a call and just say, you know what, maybe the next 10 people wouldn't struggle in this situation, but I do. And they said, these are the types of things I tend to do and say, and this is my motives for saying them most of the time. I'm working on this inside of myself, and I just wanted to share that it's my declaration right now that I want to go into this situation doing what is necessary to not do those things. Isn't that smart? Wise, or maybe even practical. And it's practical to not go 80 miles an hour on the roads when they're icy. It's just common sense. That's practical. And I don't think we do that enough spiritually. We don't do what's necessary. Just kind of have an attitude of, well, there's a spirit here, I guess I'll try and resist it, but we don't do what's necessary. Put some of the precautions in place, and I think that person did well because they did what was necessary for them. See, you, in that same situation, that call might not have been necessary for you, but it was necessary for them. But there's other things that maybe that person could do that you can't do. And you have to put necessary precautions in place. There was someone else that I was talking to who was just sharing some relational issues that they were having. And as we talked about it, he said, well, how long has these things been going on? It's like 6 or 7 years. And the person said, I was kind of hoping that time would just resolve it. And it's like, well, we doing that? Are there issues where maybe you're thinking let's just wait it out? Maybe a good sleep. Maybe a good old heavy-duty avoidance will make this one go away for a while. I know when the person said it, it was like, well, that's not a really smart thing to say. If things haven't been changing in the last 6 years, do you really think time is going to cause it to get better in the next 6 years? We have to do what is necessary. There's that quote that I found out today, often attributed to Einstein, which is not from Einstein, I guess, that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Apparently that doesn't come from him. And there's a huge debate on the internet when I looked it up of who actually said this. And you know what was interesting? one of the sources that they were crediting that may have came up with that was none other than the founders of AA. I don't know that that's the case, but there were like 3 different possibilities that they were thinking when people have really dug deep, but it didn't come from Einstein.
I always thought of it as an AA thing.
Yeah, and makes sense though, doesn't it? You can't keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. And I think we have to switch gears a little bit from being in this place of just, I want to have a good attitude, I want to have a good spirit, I'm resisting this bad influence, and we have to start going on the offensive a little bit. That's why I really like this image of Churchill, because there wasn't a lot of like opportunity for hope. But at the same time, failure wasn't an option. So he stood on his principles and just said, I'm going to do whatever's necessary or I'm going to die trying. He wasn't letting himself be put back on his heels. He was on the offensive. And then we have these moments like yesterday at Friday group where it's like 2 minutes. Like, really? That's all it took? 2 minutes just saying it out loud, saying, you know what? I am sick and tired of this spirit clouding my mind. And I know people didn't even realize it, but it was like, so what did you think that word meant? And it was like there was this days and it would take like 20 seconds for someone to answer a question. And it shouldn't take that long. And all it took was like respond. Like that's all we decided, you know what? Just respond. Just like engage. If there's a question, like engage with it. You know, just like rise up and don't let yourself be in a funk where like you just can't think straight. And in those moments, we have to do what is necessary. And if what's necessary for you is to stand up, to go put some cold water on your face, to chew a piece of gum or just whatever that takes for you, do what's necessary. I think we have to, as a group, start like being more like offensively minded spiritually. God sent us to Wakanda to break strongholds and principalities, not just so we can struggle to have a good attitude. Although that's our intercession, like we have to start being on the offensive a little bit of just saying, you know what, enough is enough. I'm just really sick and tired of any influence that would prevent me from having a clear mind. And it's not an option for me to not have one. So I'm going to do what's necessary. I'm going to do what it takes. I think that switch in attitude could change absolutely everything for us as a group. We got to get to that place where we don't need somebody to tell us, hey, move around in worship because it'll help you break through. We need to start looking at it in terms of, do I need to move around in worship right now? Is it necessary for me? And if it is, do it. And if it's not, then don't. You see, it's not like a black and white every single time you have to do this. We have a lot of teachings, a lot of different even manners of prayer, whether that's worship or praying in tongues, reading, journaling, meditating, quiet prayer, being more of an active, dynamic prayer. We have a lot of tools that we can use to break through. And each one of those things is going to be what's necessary in a given situation, but not in every situation. So rather than just showing up to a church service, you can just gauge it for a second. It is not hard to have a spiritual sensitivity and say, is my mind melded with Jesus's right now? Do I have a rich sense of the Holy Spirit? And if the answer is no, what's necessary for me to make sure that I do? Unless you just have that attitude of, well, I'll do my best. But we always have the ability to have a rich sense of Jesus. It's always there. It's the one thing that the world cannot take from us. We have to give it away. So it's not hopeless. It's always a choice. Whether it's us here sitting in a comfortable, well-heated sanctuary, or us sitting in a cold jail cell where we're being persecuted. It's always a choice. We just got to do what's necessary. And it's our job as a church to inspire each other to do that. And that's why sometimes we say, hey, get up, guys. Move around, respond. Focus in your mind. There's something that's trying to take over, have an effect on your perception of things. And sometimes we need somebody to do that. And if it's somebody asking you to do that, don't take offense. Don't let yourself be angry. That's iron sharpening iron. Sometimes somebody is in that clear mind, but if there's at least one of us, like just one of us in the group who is doing what is necessary, it should spark such a fire in everybody else to do the same. You look at it that way, and it's not, oh, I got my prayer time today. Oh, I went to church today. I did this worship. But did you do what was necessary for you to have a sound mind? A mind that is clear, one that's bent on spiritual things and is one with Jesus. And if not, then you have to look, what is necessary for me to get there? And what am I waiting for? You don't need somebody else to inspire you to do what is necessary. Especially if you see the threat. See, in this moment with World War II, they saw the threat. Everybody saw it. It was really clear. But the threat's just as real for us. We know the kind of people that we were, the kind of bondages and the kind of attitudes that we're given over to when we don't do what's necessary. And if we lose sight of that, then we're going to stop doing what's necessary and let it just overtake us again. But my gosh, we can save us a whole lot of trouble going through the same cycle over and over. If you see it as a threat, do what it takes. I'm betting that not all of us did what was necessary to break through today. And you're going to reap the benefits of whatever you did, to whatever degree. And if it was like just good enough or trying your best, I mean, if you really are trying your best, you will indeed do what's necessary, for the record. But I think sometimes I'm talking about that attitude of like, I tried my best, it's an excuse that we say. I paced back and forth. I did it for 5 minutes and it didn't break through. And that's okay, but you didn't do what was necessary. And we have such a rich library of teachings and tools at our disposal to break through whatever you're dealing with. And maybe the start is just exposure. And wasn't that pretty amazing what that person did? I know I struggle in these kind of scenarios. So I'm going to go into it knowing myself and making the necessary precautions to not do the things that I normally do. They had the greatest chance of success at that moment. And it showed a lot of humility. This is who I am without Jesus. These are the things I do. These are the things that I say. Knowing that, I'm going to do what's necessary because I like having a clear mind. I like being one with Jesus, connecting with him in that way. And I think if we can grab a hold of this as a church, we're going to stop having an attitude of waiting for something to overtake you and then doing something about it. And instead, you're going to have a more proactive, like, did I do what was necessary today to have a sound, clear mind? Sometimes in a day, that might be a half hour of prayer. Sometimes that might be 8 hours of prayer. Just depends. Sometimes we can drive really fast and not be afraid of slipping off the road. Sometimes we can't. And I don't want to be or have that attitude of that person of, well, nothing's changed in 6 years. Maybe time will work it out. That's just like not the human experience. We're getting worse and worse and worse. Our sin nature gets a bigger and bigger grip on us as we get older unless we do what's necessary. And it's going to overtake us. But thank God he's given us a spirit that like guarantees victory if we just do what it takes. All right, can I just hear a couple comments? Yeah.
Reminds me of the teaching we used to talk about just being your own taskmaster.
Yeah, a little bit.
We shouldn't need somebody else, although we do need it from time to time.
It's the point of the church, and it's what we're trying to accomplish. It's not bad that we have someone to do that, but...
Yeah, and I'd be the first to just admit that tonight I did not do my best. I had thought about actually getting up, going out, and kind of shaking things out, and I didn't. And there's times when I do, and I do have that success, but tonight I would definitely say that it was not. And so it was good to hear and just realizing that we do have all the tools that are needed, and I think all of us know when we're not connected or not totally in that place, sort of like you said, that clarity. And I need to kind of up that ante, even in my quiet times of, again, a successful quiet time is getting to that place of clarity. If you haven't gotten there, then you need to do more quiet time or do it during your day or whatever it takes. But do you have that attitude? And so it's good to have that attitude.
Yeah, and maybe whatever you did today would have been all it took a week ago.
Right.
But maybe not today.
No.
And
something else could be coming against me that's stronger that day.
Yeah, and that's the adjustment, is we shouldn't assume like what was good for one day is going to be good for today. It's just there's always different variables, different things, different just spiritual dynamics, whether it's how we're connected to others or circumstances, even things God is bringing up and exposing. It's always different. And we know that when we drive, but it would be helpful, like if when we walked in the room, what's necessary for me today? And just that question alone would like set us up for really having success, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I just think it's really cool because, again, it's on us. It's not, you can't blame anyone else. Nobody else can do that for you. We have to do what's necessary. And I think it's just really cool that it's like in our own hands and nobody else to blame. And I don't know, no excuses. Just you have to do what's necessary. So I think
Right.
it was just really powerful to speak that and own it. And yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, and not have, like, why should I have to? And it's like, I'm sorry, there's an evil that's working its way through the land. Like it or not, it's here. So either you're going to do what's necessary or you're not. It doesn't help us to be in that place of, I'm in a hopeless situation and there's, this dictatorship that's taken over a whole continent. What am I going to do? It's like it or not, it's your circumstances. You can't change that. And I think sometimes we spend a little too much time of like, but why is that spirit really strong? Who cares? We're not in control of that. But what we can do what's necessary to do something about it. Like, that's our only option. Sometimes it stinks. You want to go to bed and you want to get 8 hours of sleep or whatever. But sometimes it's necessary to stay up and pray. Sometimes it's not. And it doesn't help us to sit there and think, but this is when I go to bed, and why do I have to feel like crap right now? Why couldn't this spirit have showed up 6 hours ago while I was praying? That would have been more timely. It doesn't help us. You able to comment?
It was reminding me of that. I don't know if it's like a Marine thing or something, but like they say, like, if you, do 10 pull-ups and you think that you've done as many as you can, you actually have 100 in you or something like that.
Right.
That like, don't quote me.
You're only at 10%.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. And I know, like, for myself, like, that's 100% true. Like, when I do what's necessary and like push past what I think like my best is, like, I'm always able to achieve it, And I know I fall into that. Like, I don't even know if I think I'm a little more honest with myself. I don't even know if I say I tried my best. I just say I tried,
Yeah.
But
Right.
like, I think but there are times when I've kind of hid behind that, like, well, I tried, like, and just didn't work this time, But it's like, I know, like, when I push past, tried my best and do what's necessary, like, the success rate is 100%,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it should be a really convicting question if we follow up after I tried, but question 2, did I do what was necessary? Well, that's a different question altogether. It causes a different attitude to take root where, hey, me not being connected with Jesus, that's not an option. I'm going to be connected to him, and I'm going to do what it takes to make sure I am. And that's it. The evil's big enough, and the threat is important enough for me to do what's necessary.
My sinful nature hates to do what is necessary. It's just like, my sinful nature is an ease, saying like, oh, I'm doing my best. And it's just like, I don't need to feel uncomfortable. But when I know what is necessary to do, my sinful nature just hate doing that. It's just like, I don't want to do it. I just want to think that I'm doing my best. I'm just like doing my best at my prayer time, and I'm just like, I get up at 7 a.m. doing my best, but I know then the necessary is like walk and exert myself, and those things my sinful nature hates. And when different other situations, my sinful nature, when I know the Holy Spirit is giving me conviction what I need to do, my sinful nature hates that. Just like, no, I don't want to do it. So I know, and I'm talking for myself. I hide myself behind I'm doing my best, lying to myself, lying to everybody. Nobody can tell me anything. I'm just doing my best. But am I really doing what is necessary? Well, I know what is necessary to do because I know that I hate it right away. I don't want to do it. But I know that if I do it, I'm going to be victorious. So it just really struck me those quotes, and you were talking, and I just speak for myself, and I know how, like Kaylee was saying, like we just gave 10% everything, like, oh, we just gave her 100% everything that we have. It's like, no, you have a lot more to give.
Yeah, we're capable of so much. And just imagine the spiritual dynamic that would take over. I mean, we really believe that God sent us here to punch through some principalities and powers for revival to break through. And we believe that, don't we? Are we going to do what's necessary for that to happen? That's the question. Or is it just, I put in a good day's work, but did I do what was needed today to foster that environment in my own heart and in this place? You imagine the intensity of our services if that attitude takes over? If we all purpose ourselves in that way, both when we're together and when we're not together, to just say, it's unacceptable for me to have a cloudy mind. It is just unacceptable. I will have a sound, clear, revelatory mind everywhere I go, and when I don't, I'm going to do what is necessary. How could revival not break out with a group of people who have that attitude? And if we're at least purposing ourselves in that way, even a quarter of us have that attitude. It'll either expose the lack of that attitude in somebody else, or it will inspire them to take on that attitude. But after having this dynamic worship session that like everybody walked out like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. I was so glad that we did that. And then like a day later, we just don't even impose it on ourselves anymore. But we loved it. Like who walked out of there like, oh man, I wish I didn't do that. We were so glad. And we sat down and had our meal together, and we didn't have to fight to push through because we already did. We were just unified, and we were engaged, and we were able to fellowship. So what are we going to do? Just keep sinking backwards until we have another moment where feel inspired to do what's necessary? We're going to push the envelope. Go a little deeper. Push against that numbness and that deaf and dumbness in a way that even makes you uncomfortable. Because it's necessary for this to be a place. I mean, this is supposed to be a place. This has been a place where people walk through the door and demons fly off. Where they see angels, where deliverances happen, healings occur. God breaks through in such a rich way, and that happens. That happens when people come here. but not to the degree it's going to. Not to the magnitude that that is going to happen in this place. Why? Because as a group, we do what is necessary to have that kind of freedom ourselves, thereby also opening up a hole in the atmosphere so that other people can have that experience too. And then also start fighting to do what's necessary.
I'm just so tempted to say this. Yeah, I am Barry Bolus, and I am a sinner, because this is my pushing through thing. And I was that person on Thursday who was so grateful that by pushing through in 2 minutes, walked into the presence of God, was filled with the Spirit, spent the next day telling a friend of mine how wonderful it was. This is what happened. Everybody carried the Spirit with them. All was great. In the afternoon, everything was still fine, but then, I didn't do what was necessary to allow myself to get to a place on Saturday, today, where I took a call that sent me south. Like, it sent me south so quick. And then after 20 minutes of being in my pit, I just said, Lord, I need you. And he reminded me, turn on that song that I was singing. And I did. And I could step into it. I was sort of embarrassed to see how quickly I could step into it. And anyways, I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm really grateful for the message.
Yeah, we got to get good at making adjustments. Every day is different. Some are harder spiritually and some are not. And it doesn't really matter why that is. It's just, that's life. Sometimes things are harder than other times. And remember, we used to talk all the time, Phil would say this, that what makes a good general is not somebody who just has good strategy, but somebody who makes the needed adjustments. Yeah, you can be sticking with your strategy, but if unexpected happens, you got to be able to adjust. And I think we don't adjust enough. We just think, well, that hour of prayer, even that 15 minutes of prayer, that was good enough yesterday. And maybe it was, but it might not be good enough today. And when we think in those terms, we won't get so locked into a routine as much as, well, what does it take for you to get a sound mind with Jesus today? And that might be totally different than what it takes for you tomorrow.
That to me is also very critical, because I knew this strategy has been going on for a while, where I read Isaiah 61, and it's all about, putting on the garments of praise, and it's all about that oil on your head and for the spirit of heaviness, and singing my way out of it. It might not work tomorrow, but I remember I went through a season of loving journaling, and maybe that's what's going to work. But I'm glad just to be a little transparent about.
What's really wild is sometimes all we have to do is just get into a mindset of, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And like that's all it was yesterday, where it's just sitting there and it's like, this is just not okay. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm really done right now with this like slumber like I've just had enough. Like, I'm not willing to tolerate it anymore. And that's all it took. It's like just an attitude sometimes of like, I will do whatever it takes. And a lot of times that demon sees that in you, And it's like, well, why even stick around? I believe them. I'll come back in a more opportune time. It's just that simple. I mean, sometimes it does take a while to break through, but when you're set in your heart, like, I will do whatever's necessary to have breakthrough today. You're going to have it. That determination will just like plow through whatever you got to plow through. Okay, so I'm going to close in prayer, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to play that last song from worship one more time, and let's really just you do what's necessary to just seal the deal and get that connection with God, and then we'll go get some food. Sound good?
Yep.
So, Lord, right now we just rebuke that spirit of deaf and dumbness, slumber, heaviness, and we just declare as a community of believers, we will do whatever is necessary to be in union with our Lord, to break through. We will not be dragged down or encumbered by any spirit that's not from you, God. We just declare our devotion to you right now. It's our number one priority. And would you help us as a community of believers, Lord, to learn how to push through, to even contend for this revival that's been in motion and is coming soon. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.